Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I just recalled this experience from when I was a teenager and realized it would be a perfect tale of petty revenge. Those subreddits can be too strict, so I'll share it here, unfiltered. I'm one of the lucky few immune to both poison ivy and poison oak. A superpower I once exploited for mischief. Small-scale mischief, nothing too sinister. It was the summer of 2012, and I was 15 years old, attending a week-long Boy Scout jamboree with my troop. We camped alongside the National Guard, who trained us in firearms like the M4 and M249, land navigation and endurance courses through the Texas countryside. I should mention that I despised most of the scouts in my troop. Half were borderline sociopaths. One guy actually chopped off another kid's finger on a dare, while the rest were entitled brats. I had zero friends and ultimately quit scouting because of them. Towards the end of the jamboree, our senior patrol leader, a smug Eagle Scout named Brock, whacked me in the forehead with the butt of his knife while eating peanut butter straight from the jar. Why? Who knows? Maybe just because I existed. The previous day, during a recon exercise, I had spotted a poison ivy patch and marked it on my map. After the silverware incident, revenge wasn't on my mind, but an opportunity presented itself. As we prepared for the navigation course, we were just yards from that ivy patch. The other scouts seemed oblivious, but a core scouting principle echoed in my head. When opportunity knocks, you answer like a man. I marched us straight through that ivy, and not a single tenderfoot, star, or Eagle Scout identified it. We were all in shorts too, skin exposed. Poetic. Hours later, as dusk fell, the sweetest sounds drifted through camp, the agonized cries of my troop, tormented by the fiery itch of poison ivy. No one had a drop of calamine lotion either, sheer cathartic bliss after their relentless bullying. Their suffering serenaded me to sleep that night. We had to break camp first thing and go home, which was just fine by me. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived on my family's farm for as long as I can remember. Growing up in the countryside was idyllic. I loved the open fields, the fresh air, and the peace and quiet. My closest neighbor lived about a mile down the road, so I was used to having plenty of space to myself. That all changed a few years ago when a newcomer bought the property next to ours. I first met John when he came over to introduce himself. He seemed friendly enough at the time. I even offered to show him around the area since he was new. But John politely declined, saying he had lots of work to do on his new house and land. I didn't think much of it until the construction crews showed up. It was non-stop noise and activity over there for months. I figured John was doing major renovations, so I didn't complain. But I started to get suspicious when I noticed construction happening in the back section of his property. I couldn't see exactly what he was building from my side. The area was obscured by trees and a small hill on the border. Strangest of all, everything seemed to happen only at night. The crews would show up after sunset and work until sunrise with massive floodlights. Then they'd clear out like clockwork every morning. I considered asking John about it, but we hadn't interacted much since that first meeting. Plus, it was his land. He could do what he wanted, even if it was annoying. It all became clear one night when I was out doing my usual evening chores. I kept hearing strange noises in the distance. Music, laughter, screams of delight. I realized it was coming from John's property. My curiosity got the better of me, so I walked to the top of the hill overlooking his land. What I saw nearly made my jaw hit the ground. John had built a full-fledged amusement park back there. Roller coasters, a Ferris wheel, concession stands, the works. Under the cover of night, he had constructed an entire theme park. I watched in shock as crowds of people poured in, laughing and rushing onto the rides. It suddenly made sense. The night construction, the noise. John had been building this right under my nose. Without even a thought about the impact on me or the other neighbors. I was fuming as I marched back to my house. How could John pull something like this in a quiet farming community? He had a lot of nerve. Still, a sly thought crossed my mind. According to the property maps, a good chunk of that amusement park was actually on my land. John had unlawfully built it over the border, which meant I was owed compensation. A wicked grin spread across my face as a plan formed in my mind. The very next day, I paid a visit to John's front door. I had photocopies of the property maps and a proposal. John looked annoyed when he saw me, clearly wondering how I had discovered his secret operation. But I flashed a friendly smile and got right to business. "Morning, John. I couldn't help but notice that new amusement park you built. Very impressive. Though I did want to point out that at least 30% of it is on my property. Now, I'm not one to make a fuss about borders and such, but I do think it's only fair I get a cut of the profits given the situation." John's face turned red with anger. "Now see here! I built this park fair and square. I'm not giving you a single cent," he shouted. I stayed calm and slid the property map over to him. I'm happy to get the municipality involved if needed, but I'm sure we can handle this like good neighbors. Seeing the clear proof on paper, John reluctantly agreed to give me 35% of all park profits going forward. And just like that, I had landed myself a brand new revenue stream. John tried protesting more at first, but eventually he gave up. As long as the money kept rolling in, he accepted our little arrangement. And let me tell you, the money has been rolling in like crazy. That amusement park became hugely popular in our area. On summer nights, the parking lot overflows with excited families and thrill-seeking teens. It's by far the hotspot destination for miles around. Meanwhile, I just sit back and collect my 35% cut every month, which, believe me, is no small sum. John begrudgingly hands over the cash, muttering under his breath each time. But hey, business is business. He made his choice when he built over the property line. This turned out better than I ever could have imagined. Now, when I look out and see those roller coaster cars zooming along, I just smile. Who knew my entitled neighbor's secret construction project would turn into a cash cow for yours truly? The way I see it, John actually did me a favor, even if he didn't mean to. So I always make sure to thank him sincerely during our monthly payment meetings. The frustrated look on his face is just icing on the cake. The next one is a petty revenge story. One of my friends, let's call her Sarah, was dating a boy for a month before breaking up. At the time, I wasn't surprised since their relationship was just a casual sling, but I was wrong. The boyfriend, let's call him Thomas, actually had a very high self-esteem, to the point that he makes fun of others. Sarah didn't like that, especially since he also made fun of me and her other friends behind our backs. Thus, the breakup. But even then, Thomas would always say that it's cause of Sarah being jealous of his high intelligence that she broke up with him. This infuriated her, so she came up with a mini revenge. A week ago, our accountancy teacher told us that during one of her lessons, she'll ask a surprise quiz about what we learned that day. The catch? We don't know when she'll ask the quiz, so we better pay attention or else we'll get massive extra homework. Sarah used this to her knowledge. In the following days, she texted Thomas, acting like she wants him back and begging to be back together during class, especially accountancy period. At first, Thomas didn't reply back much, but after some time, he started texting her back. She said that Thomas probably felt a huge ego boost that a girl he'd broken up with wants to be back together, fueling his imagine of him being charming and perfect. It got to the point where that they text each other during a whole period. Then, it finally happened. During accountancy period, Sarah began texting in secret, making us miss our accountancy teacher's lecture. Then, when the dreaded pop quiz came out of nowhere, Thomas was feeling a bit panicked, according to Sarah, as he was too busy texting Sarah to actually pay attention to the lecture. When his turn finally came, he couldn't answer any of the questions my teacher asked. Now, my accountancy teacher is a very strict woman, so she wasn't happy that Thomas didn't answer her questions, even her simple ones, and gave him lots of homework as punishment for not paying attention. Thomas felt humiliated. Now, this is where I came in unintentionally and make Sarah's mini revenge better. You see, I fell asleep during accountancy period and, like Thomas, missed my teacher's lecture because I didn't get proper sleep last night. When my teacher saw me sleeping, she immediately woke me up and asked me questions. To Thomas's shock and Sarah's amusement, I answered everything correctly. Reason? Because I have daily accountancy tuition, so even though I slept through the entire class, I was still able to answer correctly since I already learned the topic in my tuition. Sarah said that me answering correctly, despite the fact that I slept through and didn't hear the teacher's lecture, rubbed salt to Thomas's ones since he regarded me as one of the most stupidest kids in the class. Which, understandable since I wasn't the smartest. Sarah came to me after school, told me all of this, and thanked me for my unintentional part in it. So yeah, that's how Sarah got her mini revenge and how I played an unintentional part on it. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Just a short one to celebrate a victory. The dilemma? Our company has flexible working hours, and some of us who are late sleepers or have to take care of small children in the morning will not start work before 9 or 10 a.m. Unfortunately, one department we work with has their entire management level filled with early risers who just love to set up early morning meetings. We need another weekly meeting to discuss current operations? How about 8 a.m. on Monday? Let's vote on it. The early risers are the majority, our arguments are disregarded, and their boss says, well, we voted for it, and the majority believes that 8 a.m. is the best time. You'll have to adjust. That's how democracy works. Okay, he's right. If your name is Orban or Erdogan or Duterte, then that is how democracy does work. Majority good, minority bad, down with the minority. Recently, the number of topics started to exceed the capacity of that meeting, so it was decided to have another weekly to deal with the rest. We asked for nothing more than to schedule the new meeting after 10 a.m. But that's for the majority to decide. I'll ask my assistant to schedule a new meeting that fits into everyone's schedule," he said with a smirk, knowing that the assistant would ignore any morning blockers that were not actual meetings. Time for some malicious compliance. Since the assistant had already left, early risers, the opposing forces gathered and started to invent new weekly and daily meetings for our department. Now we had early morning meetings every day, a daily just after the early risers' lunch break, we prefer to eat later, and various other weekly meetings that blocked other important time slots. Today the assistant surprised the department head with her new meeting proposal for a mid-afternoon, just before he usually leaves, and likes to leave a bit earlier, since all earlier slots were already blocked. I know for sure that he suspects foul play, but our team has joined the effort, and even my boss has claimed that she's only seeing valid entries in our calendars. The people's democratic resistance works. Take that, tyrannical pretenders. The next one is an entitled people's story. I understand that the title might seem exaggerated, and given the circumstances it probably wasn't a serious threat, but at the first moment I definitely took it that way. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. Last weekend I was at a festival which carries quite a bit of relevance in the area. What's special about this festival is that it uses what some locals call the Nazi festival area, given that it was used for the NSDAP rallies from 1933 to 1938, and was going to be used for much longer if it wasn't for the war. There are reminders of Germany's darkest past like every 5 meters. Nowadays it serves as a memorial museum and occasionally as a venue for big events, like said festival. Anyways, keep in mind the special history of that place. So I was generally having a good time as there was no shortage of alcohol and people were actually giving me lots of attention because I was wearing a unicorn costume, just to stand out a little. To be honest, it was hot AF and rather impractical, but people generally found it funny, and especially the security personnel always smiled when they saw me, and that made it worth it. As the day went on, I saw a guy with a jacket that had a very cool patch, and I thought to myself, I can't sew a patch on in that short time until the next act, but I do have a sticker with the message, so I'll just stick that on for now. The message on the sticker in question, FCKNZS. Given that I paid attention in history class, I can tell you with 100% certainty that duck Nazis is not a controversial statement to make. It is the only postdition to support. If you disagree with me about this, go back to whatever cave you came from and duck yourself. So generally I had a great time. Billy Talent was playing, Green Day was next, and people now seem to enjoy my outfit even more. That's when I felt a little exhausted and stepped out of the mosh pit to take a breath. While facing the stage, I felt someone touching the horn of my unicorn costume and doing jerk-off motions. I looked around, and because this wasn't the first time I said, well, that's it, I just came. The man and the woman, both in their early to mid-20s, laughed, but the laugh died down when they saw my sticker, which was placed on my chest, BTW. The woman tried to take it off, and I said, no, this needs to stay, I am an anti-fascist unicorn. She still tried to pull it off, and I asked, being very optimistic, do you need one? I got some more. She said, yeah, give me all of them. I thought something was wrong and only gave her one. She tried to light it on fire, which didn't work, to which I said, it is common knowledge that Nazis want to burn crap, so we're prepared. That won't work. She then held the lighter towards my costume and said, doesn't matter, you're gonna burn anyways. At that moment, I was a little nervous. On the one hand, I thought, she wouldn't do that, right? I mean, an incident like that would likely mean the festival would be cancelled, right? Also, there's plenty of people around to witness/help me, and security was only 5 meters or so away to detain her should things escalate. On the other hand, I thought, this woman, actually I had some other choice words in my mind for her, but I can't remember all of them, came to former Nazi party rally grounds and tried to set a FCKNZS sticker on fire. It takes a different kind of ignorance, stupidity, and lack of social awareness to try that. Who know what she'd do? Long story longer, I was too stunned to say anything smart, so I just slapped the lighter away and mumbled something like, read the ducking room and go back to 5th grade history, but I doubt she heard it. The festival in general was insane, but this little incident on the first day threw a shadow over the other days for me too. That is until the last day about 50-60. K-people did a middle finger wave dedicated to the German far-right party and chanted that the Anitra city/country hates them. That restored my faith in humanity a little. The next one is an entitled parent's story. I own a small restaurant, classic American foods, decent prices, kid-friendly. One of our policies is that kids 10 and under can get anything off the kids' menu for free. The stuff on the kids' menu is cheap. Like, a bowl of mac and cheese with some chicken nuggets isn't breaking my bank on food cost. A hot dog and some fries aren't going to bankrupt me. Last night, I was sitting in the office watching some YouTube videos when I noticed a family that I know personally. Their daughter, 12F, is friends with my granddaughter, 13F. When I see people I know, I have a tendency to sort of take over the table. The server still gets the tip, but I give the table a lot of extra attention. So I stop over and say hi, and I check their ticket in the computer out of curiosity. The dad got our 22 ounces porterhouse with a fully dressed potato, butter, cheese, sour cream, bacon, chili, ranch dressing, and crispy fried onions. The mom got our fried catfish and hush puppies. The daughter got our pulled pork cheeseburger with onion rings. Note, daughter ordered off the main menu, not the kids' menu. Anyway, they spend about 40 minutes eating, drinking, and generally being merry. Both myself and their server are keeping an eye on their drinks, making sure they are having a good experience. I even gave them 5 free credits on the jukebox just to be nice. I head back to the office to take a phone call, and while I'm back there, I notice a commotion on the cameras at that very same table. Before I can make it to the dining room, the server is in the kitchen heading towards my office. Apparently there was a mistake with their tab and their daughter's meal should have been free. The server tried to explain that that only applies to items on the kids' menu and the girl had ordered off the main menu. The explanation fell on deaf ears. So, I head out to solve the problem. I explain that not only did the girl order off the main menu, but I know for a fact that their daughter is not 10 or under, since my granddaughter had been to her 12th birthday party back in March. The mom tried to argue, but the dad put his hand up, apologized for his wife's behavior, and passed me his card to pay. Before they had even left my establishment, the mom already left a nasty and completely false Google review, stating that we lie about our policies and kids don't really get free meals. The next story is titled, Neighbors Kept Parking in Our Lot. I froze them out. Over 2 decades ago, my family and I lived in a peaceful suburban neighborhood just outside Chicago, known for its unique 3-flat apartment buildings. My parents, always thinking ahead, had invested in 2 of these buildings. We occupied 2 units while renting out the remaining 4 to tenants. The buildings were situated on a large plot of land, which was considered a luxury in the area. As a result, we had ample parking space for 16 cars, making it a perfect living situation for both our family and our tenants. For many years, things ran smoothly in our little community. Our tenants were respectful, and we never had any issues with parking or property boundaries. However, our peaceful life was disrupted when new neighbors moved in a few buildings down. They purchased a single unit and soon began causing trouble. We started noticing unfamiliar cars occupying our parking spaces, and I even caught one of the new neighbors driving through our bushes and across the yard to exit the property. Outraged by their brazen disregard for our property, I contacted the police, but their hands were tied. Determined to put an end to the unauthorized parking, I contacted a tow company, which promptly installed signs warning that unauthorized vehicles would be towed. The signs seemed to do the trick, and the random cars stopped appearing on our lot. However, our victory was short-lived. On New Year's Eve, as the neighborhood prepared for a night of celebrations, I returned home to find our parking lot completely overrun with cars. To make matters worse, some vehicles were parked on the street, effectively blocking our tenants' cars from leaving. Furious, I called the tow company, only to learn they were swamped with calls and couldn't come for several hours. Meanwhile, the temperature outside was well below freezing, turning the streets into a winter wonderland. As I stood there, shivering in the cold, an idea struck me. I decided to teach the trespassers a lesson they'd never forget. I gathered our lawn sprinklers and hoses and connected one to the laundry room faucet, using hot water to prevent the equipment from freezing up. Then I embarked on a mission to cover every inch of the parking lot, the street, and the offending cars in a thick layer of ice. I was particularly diligent about targeting the locks, window seals, and grills of the cars. After 5 hours of meticulously spraying the area with water, I put away the equipment and retired to bed, anxiously awaiting the morning's events. At 4 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sound of furious pounding on our door and the relentless ringing of our doorbell. Grinning, I called the police and waited for them to arrive, sipping my coffee as I watched the chaos unfold from my window. When the officers arrived, they struggled to suppress their laughter at the icy spectacle before them. The partygoers, it seemed, had been directed to park on our property by their friend, the same inconsiderate neighbor who had driven through our bushes. I pointed to the tow sign and informed the irate crowd that they had 2 options: move their cars or face being towed. With my permission, the officers ticketed all the frozen vehicles, which were eventually towed since no one could gain access to their ice-encased cars. A few weeks later, my family and I received an unexpected visit from the neighborhood's homeowners association. They had caught wind of our frosty retribution and, to our surprise, wanted to recognize us for taking a stand against the ongoing parking issue in the community. They awarded us a certificate of appreciation and even vowed to implement new measures to prevent unauthorized parking in the area. Our actions had not only caught the attention of the neighborhood but also inspired change. However, this wasn't the end of our story. A couple of months after the icy incident, the inconsiderate neighbor decided to throw another party. This time, they were cautious not to park on our property, but they still took up most of the available street parking, leaving our tenants with no place to park. I decided that a more creative solution was needed to send a strong message. I enlisted the help of some of our tenants, who were eager to participate in teaching the neighbor a lesson. We constructed a makeshift barrier using traffic cones and caution tape, effectively boxing in the cars parked on the street. We then posted a large sign that read, "Respect your neighbor's parking rights." Additionally, I had made contact with the tow company ahead of time, ensuring their prompt assistance if needed. The next morning, we were once again awakened by furious pounding on our door and the incessant ringing of our doorbell. This time, however, we were prepared. As the police arrived, the officers couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of the boxed-in vehicles. The irate partygoers were left with no choice but to call a tow truck to move their cars, which they did at their own expense. In the days that followed, we received numerous messages of support and gratitude from our tenants and other neighbors who had grown weary of the inconsiderate neighbors' antics. The Homeowners Association followed through on their promise, implementing new parking regulations and even increasing the fines for unauthorized parking. The inconsiderate neighbor, now notorious for their parking blunders, eventually decided to move out, selling their unit to a more considerate family. From that point forward, our little community returned to its peaceful state, with residents respecting each other's parking rights. While I didn't capture any video evidence of the dramatic events that transpired during those unforgettable months, the memories remain etched in my mind as a testament to standing up for one's property and teaching inconsiderate neighbors a lesson they'll never forget. Moreover, it proved the power of community action and unity in resolving conflicts and fostering a harmonious living environment for all. In my opinion, this story was quite the roller coaster. It's fascinating to see how the narrator came up with creative solutions to protect their property and parking rights. It just goes to show that sometimes thinking outside the box can bring about change, not only for one person, but for an entire community. While the methods were a bit unconventional, it's heartening to see that in the end, the neighborhood came together to support each other and enforce more considerate behavior. It's a great reminder that we all have a role to play in maintaining a harmonious living environment. The next story is titled, "HOA Forced Me to Pay HOA Fees." Although I'm not part of the HOA, I sued them for $154,000. Life has a way of teaching us lessons when we least expect it. For me, one of the most significant lessons I've learned in recent years is that standing up for myself and fighting for justice can be worth the struggle, even when it seems impossible. This is the story of how I took on a corrupt homeowners association, HOA, and emerged victorious, changing the lives of my neighbors and myself for the better. About 18 years ago, I decided to move to Plaza del Sol, a picturesque community nestled in a quiet corner of the city. I was drawn to the area's charm and the promise of a peaceful, friendly neighborhood. Little did I know that my life would be forever changed by the events that unfolded in this seemingly idyllic location. The community of Plaza del Sol was divided into two distinct sections. The first section, where I purchased a lovely older home, was built several years before the newer, more upscale second section. Upon closing the deal on my house, I received a packet of HOA documents and was informed that I was part of the association. At the time, I thought nothing of it and accepted the responsibility without question. For a decade, I paid my HOA fees diligently, which amounted to a staggering $400 per month. The association wasn't overly strict, and I had no reason to suspect anything was amiss. That is, until one fateful day when I received a peculiar letter from the HOA. The letter requested that all homeowners in Section 1 sign updated legal documents. It was cryptic and vague, which immediately aroused my suspicion. As I reviewed the new documents, I made a shocking discovery. The homes in Section 1 were never meant to be part of the HOA. It seemed that the association had been dishonestly collecting fees from us for years, under the pretense of authority they never possessed. This realization sparked a fire within me, and I decided that I could no longer sit idly by while the HOA exploited my neighbors and me. I refused to sign the updated documents and stop paying my fees. I rallied my neighbors in Section 1, and together we began to resist the HOA's unjust demands. The HOA did not take our rebellion lightly. They threatened and harassed us, even going so far as to attempt to auction my house off in a short sale. It was at this point that I decided to take legal action against the association, despite the uphill battle that lay ahead. Finding a lawyer who was willing to take on an HOA case proved to be a significant challenge. Many attorneys I contacted were hesitant to get involved in such disputes, as they can be notoriously difficult to win. However, after a long search, I found a capable and determined attorney who was eager to bring justice to our situation. The legal battle was long, arduous, and emotionally draining. It took years for the case to finally reach the court, but I never lost sight of the goal: to expose the HOA's corruption and free my neighbors and myself from their grasp. When we finally faced off against the HOA in court, I was nervous but resolute. The HOA's lawyer was aggressive and attempted to discredit me, but my attorney presented a compelling case. He revealed that the association had misrepresented its authority over Section 1 and had been deceitfully collecting fees from us for years. The jury found the HOA guilty of negligent misrepresentation and awarded me a third of the fees I had paid over the years. But the battle was far from over. The HOA appealed the ruling, dragging the case on for another year and pushing it through various levels of the legal system. The emotional and financial toll on me and my fellow Section 1 neighbors was immense, but we remained steadfast in our pursuit of justice. Eventually, our case reached the Supreme Court, where the final showdown took place. The judge carefully considered the evidence presented by both sides, asking probing questions that cut to the heart of the matter. The HOA's lawyer continued to be aggressive, but it was clear that their case was unraveling. Finally, the judge delivered the verdict. The Supreme Court upheld the original ruling and ordered the HOA to pay me over half of the fees I had paid them over the years. The total award amounted to $154,000. Though it didn't completely cover my legal expenses, it was a significant victory that sent a clear message to the corrupt association. With the ruling in our favor, the residents of Section 1 were finally free from the HOA's tyrannical grip. No longer burdened by their unjust fees and rules, we could once again enjoy the peaceful, friendly neighborhood we had originally sought. However, the story didn't end there. In a dramatic turn of events, our legal victory inspired other homeowners to investigate their own HOAs, uncovering a widespread pattern of corruption and exploitation. News of our case spread far and wide, prompting a wave of legal challenges against dishonest associations across the country. As a result, regulations and oversight for HOAs were strengthened, protecting homeowners from future abuses. Today, I continue to live in my beloved home in Plaza del Sol's Section 1, where the memory of our hard-fought battle serves as a constant reminder of the importance of standing up for what's right. In my yard stands a sign that reads, "HOAs suck," a testament to the perseverance and determination that brought justice to our community and sparked nationwide change. Together, my neighbors and I forged an unbreakable bond, and we remain vigilant, ensuring that no one else will suffer the same fate at the hands of a corrupt HOA. In my opinion, this story is a testament to the power of standing up for what's right, even in the face of adversity. It's inspiring to see how one person's determination to fight for justice not only changed their own life, but also sparked a movement that led to nationwide reforms. The story is a reminder that we should always question authority when it seems unfair and never be afraid to stand our ground. It's also a great example of the power of community and how, when people come together for a common cause, real change can happen. Overall, I found the story engaging and thought-provoking, and it definitely makes me think twice about the role of HOAs in our neighborhoods. The next story is titled, "Dealing with a Gas Thief." Ever since I could remember, my family owned a charming beach house perched on a cliff in a small coastal town in Puerto Rico. The town was an idyllic blend of rich history, breathtaking landscapes, and diverse cultures. It was a sanctuary for artists, writers, and travelers alike, attracted by the exquisite culinary scene and vibrant arts community. Growing up, I spent many summers in that quaint beach house, surrounded by the lush greenery and mesmerizing turquoise waters. After completing my studies and working in the city for a few years, I decided to move back to my childhood home. I yearned for a slower pace of life, a chance to reconnect with nature, and the opportunity to nurture my own creativity. My beach house became my haven, a place where I could work remotely and escape the chaotic urban life. One major challenge of living in such a remote area was the frequent power outages during the rainy season. As a digital freelancer, a stable internet connection was essential. To ensure my work remained uninterrupted, I relied on a gasoline generator. It wasn't the most eco-friendly solution, but it allowed me to maintain a semblance of modern living in this beautiful, rustic setting. A few months after moving back, a new neighbor arrived in town. He lived a couple of houses down the cliffside path and had a vintage Chevy van from the 70s parked outside his home. The van was a work of art, adorned with vivid psychedelic patterns and gleaming chrome accents. Although I admired his taste in automobiles, my new neighbor, whom I'll call Rick, turned out to be anything but agreeable. One afternoon, I discovered that the gasoline container I kept outside for emergencies had been tampered with. I had seen Rick lurking around my property earlier that day, and I confronted him about the missing gasoline. He feigned ignorance, denying any involvement in the theft. I decided to let it slide, hoping it was a one-time occurrence. However, a week later, the same thing happened again. Frustration and anger bubbled inside me, but I knew that confronting Rick again would likely yield the same result. Instead, I devised a plan to teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. I emptied the gasoline container, refilled my generator, and topped off my car's tank. Then, I drove to the nearest gas station and filled the container with diesel fuel. I placed the container back in its usual spot outside my house and waited. A few nights later, the sound of a tow truck shattered the peaceful silence. Peering out my window, I saw the truck hoisting Rick's incapacitated van onto its bed. Rick's face contorted with rage as he hurled curses into the night air. I couldn't suppress a satisfied grin, watching him suffer the consequences of his actions. Word spread quickly about Rick's nefarious activities, and it became apparent that he had a long history of petty theft and dishonesty. The small community, once welcoming and trusting, now united against him. His actions had disturbed the peace and harmony that defined our town. The final straw came when the landlord evicted Rick due to multiple complaints from other tenants. As he packed his belongings and drove away, the community breathed a collective sigh of relief. With the gas thief gone, life in our picturesque town returned to normal. Months passed, and I continued to cherish the tranquil life in the coastal town. Although I still kept a container of gasoline outside, I added a lock for extra security. The dramatic incident with Rick had become a distant memory, a reminder that even in paradise there can be trouble. Update. Sometime later I learned that Rick had relocated to another part of the island. Unfortunately, his penchant for mischief followed him. Through the grapevine, I heard that he had been arrested for attempting to steal a boat from a local marina. It seemed that Rick was incapable of changing his ways. A year after the incident, a massive storm hit the coast, causing widespread damage and leaving many residents without power for weeks. The community rallied together, working tirelessly to repair the damage and help those in need. Amidst the chaos, I couldn't help but think about Rick and how his actions had inadvertently united our community. During the recovery efforts, I met a young couple who had recently moved into Rick's old house. They were kind, hardworking, and shared my love for the arts. In a twist of fate, the gas thief's departure had paved the way for new friendships and a renewed sense of unity in our close-knit town. As we rebuilt our lives after the storm, I realized that sometimes adversity can bring out the best in people. Our community had faced both the figurative and literal storms and emerged stronger than ever. The once troubled beach house down the path had become a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of a united community. As for Rick, I occasionally heard updates on his misadventures. He continued to drift from place to place, leaving a trail of anger and distrust in his wake. While it was disheartening to know that some people never change, I was grateful that our community had come together to rise above the darkness he had cast over our once peaceful town. In the end, the story of the gas thief became a pivotal moment in the history of our coastal community. It taught us the importance of unity and vigilance in the face of adversity, and ultimately it reminded us that together we could weather any storm. In my opinion, this story was a captivating read that showcased the strength and unity of a close-knit community. I enjoyed how the author depicted the beautiful coastal setting and the contrast between the idyllic surroundings and the gas thief's malicious actions. It's a great reminder that sometimes adversity can bring out the best in people, and I appreciate how the story ended on a hopeful note, highlighting the power of a united community. It goes to show that even in paradise, there can be bumps in the road, but those challenges often make us stronger in the end. The last story is titled, Won't Call Me By My Name, You Get a New One. As someone born into an immigrant family, my parents always wanted me to stay connected to our roots. Hailing from a small Eastern European country, they were proud of their heritage and wanted me to carry that pride forward. With that in mind, they decided to give me a name that truly embodied our culture, Elisabetta. Although I've always cherished my unique name, I can't deny that it has caused me a great deal of frustration over the years. Growing up in the United States, I quickly realized that my name was a constant source of confusion for many people. Friends, teachers, and even some family members struggled to pronounce it correctly. As the years went by, I grew accustomed to the mispronunciations and the various nicknames people came up with, but one thing always bothered me. My own extended family couldn't seem to get my name right. Now, in my early 30s, I still find myself correcting people on a regular basis. Most of the time, they would call me Elizabeth, which wasn't even close to my actual name. It was during one of our annual Thanksgiving gatherings at my grandparents' house that I finally reached my breaking point. Each year, relatives from near and far would come together to celebrate Thanksgiving. The house would be filled with laughter, love, and delicious food. This year, though, my patience was wearing thin. My Uncle James, who had never been able to pronounce my name correctly, was the final straw. He persistently called me Elizabeth throughout the day, despite my multiple attempts to correct him. After the umpteenth time, I had enough. I confronted him, exasperated. "Uncle James, it's Elisabetta, not Elizabeth. Please try to remember that." He rolled his eyes and said dismissively, "What did I say? Why does it matter? I said it close enough." In that moment, something inside me snapped. I decided that if my name's pronunciation didn't matter to him, why should I make an effort with his? From that point forward, I would call him Jamboree. It was a ridiculous name, but it seemed fitting for the situation. At first, Uncle James found the whole thing amusing. He chuckled at his new nickname, thinking I would eventually drop it. However, as the day wore on and more family members began calling him Jamboree, he grew increasingly annoyed. The Thanksgiving feast was a lavish affair with everyone gathered around a beautifully decorated table, sharing stories and jokes. As we enjoyed the meal, I could see Jamboree's frustration mounting. He tried to ignore the constant teasing, but it was evident that the nickname was getting under his skin. As dessert was being served, Uncle James could no longer contain his irritation. He slammed his fork down on the table, causing the silverware to clatter and everyone to fall silent. Standing up, he addressed the room with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "All right, I've had enough. I get it, Elisabetta. I didn't realize how much it bothered you. From now on, I promise I'll make an effort to get your name right," he conceded, his face flushed with frustration. Feeling a mix of relief and sympathy, I decided it was time to end the ordeal. "Thank you, Uncle James. I appreciate it," I replied sincerely. The next day, as we all pitched in to clean up the aftermath of the feast, I overheard Uncle James quietly practicing my name, repeating it under his breath. It seemed he was genuinely determined to get it right. Months went by, and to my delight, Uncle James consistently addressed me by my proper name. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to me. I could see that he was making a genuine effort to respect my identity, and it brought us closer as a family. As Thanksgiving approached again the following year, I was both excited and apprehensive. I hoped that the progress we had made would last, and that this year's gathering would be free of any name-related drama. To my surprise and relief, not only did Uncle James continue to call me Elisabetta, but other family members seemed to have taken notice of his efforts, and were making a conscious attempt to get my name right as well. However, just when I thought the day would pass without incident, a new issue arose. My cousin Amanda, who had recently married a man from a different cultural background, introduced her husband Kieran to the family. Throughout the evening, I noticed that some family members were struggling to pronounce Kieran's name, and it brought back memories of my own experiences. Determined to prevent another family member from experiencing the same frustration I had, I decided to take action. I proposed a toast during the meal, drawing everyone's attention. "Family," I began, "we come from a rich cultural heritage, and it's important that we respect and honor each other's names. As someone who has faced this challenge myself, I'd like to ask all of us to make an effort to get Kieran's name right, just as Uncle James has done with mine." Uncle James, sitting across the table, gave me a knowing smile, and everyone raised their glasses in agreement. It was a poignant moment that not only helped bring our family closer together, but also highlighted the importance of recognizing and respecting the diverse backgrounds that made our family unique. From that day on, our family gatherings became a celebration of not just togetherness, but of the rich tapestry of cultures that we all represented. Names were no longer a source of frustration or confusion, but a symbol of the love and respect we had for one another. And as for Uncle James and me, our bond only grew stronger with each passing year, as we both learned the power and significance of something as simple as getting a name right. In my opinion, this story is a great reminder of the importance of respecting each other's names and cultural backgrounds. It's easy to see how the protagonist's frustration with her family's inability to pronounce her name correctly led to some humorous and dramatic moments. But at the same time, the story beautifully shows how a small act of understanding and effort can bring people closer together. It's a nice lesson in empathy and the power of recognizing the little things that make each of us unique. I really enjoyed reading it, and it made me reflect on my own experiences with names and cultural differences. The next story is titled, You Do Need to Be Physically Present When Your Daughter is Swimming in the Pool. A very, very good friend of mine recently got on a plane with her 3 boys, 8, 9, and 10, by herself to visit with Grandma for a month over summer vacation. I was on transport duty because driving to and from the airport is a young man's game, and also I love spending time with my homies. There was an accidentally on purpose scheduling issue, namely my friend wanted a day in a hotel to recuperate from the flight with her 3 boys before her mom starts driving her insane. Husband is coming up in a few weeks because he just started a new job and can't just be like, back in a month. So I snatch all 4 people and luggage from the airport and give them a lift to the hotel. All 3 boys are bouncing off the walls and my friend just needs a nap. So, hotel pool time. She's posted up under an umbrella and is dead to the world. I'm in the pool with the boys. We started off playing Marco Polo and then had to get creative once other folks were in the pool as well. Eventually we settled on a game called Not Done Yet. Basically, I'm standing on one side of the steps out of the pool, and when the boys feel like it, they try and leave the pool. I decide if they're done or not yet using a complicated examination process that amounts to picking the kid up, giving them a bit of a shake, faking a big sniff, say, not done yet, and yeet them back into the pool. Obviously, if someone's waterlogged or actually wants out, I won't stop them, but typically there's giggling and a bit of cue for inspection, so the game continues. I get a workout, they get tired out, everybody wins. Then a new player enters the playing field in the form of a very sweet-looking girl, approximately 6 years old, wearing water wings. She asks if she can play too. I say, of course she can, but she needs to ask whoever's watching her first so I know it's okay with everyone. She says, okay, and exits the pool. I'm keeping an eye on where she's going so I can smile and give the I'm not a creep wave to whoever's minding the kid. Only, she doesn't run to one of the adults on the lounge chairs, she runs back into the hotel dripping wet. She disappears inside and comes back down about 5 minutes later and says, Mommy says it's okay. Only she's not the type of kid who lies without batting an eye and is obviously fibbing. I ask if she really did, and the little girl says, well, Mommy was busy, so I think it's okay. It's at this point that the proverbial record scratches and my inner monologue says, what? I summon the oldest of the boys from the waterborne shenanigans and ask him to go wake up his mom so she can keep an eye on things for a minute. I need to go take care of something. While he's bearding the dragon in her den, I crouch down and tell the little girl, we need to go inside and find an adult because it's not okay that you're in the pool all by yourself, okay? You didn't do anything wrong, but you've got some growing to do before you can be in the pool all by yourself, okay? At this point, oldest homie has awoken the mom and she's now looking at me with a what the crap look on her face. I mouth later at her and then take the little girl's hand and bring her to the concierge desk of the hotel. I explain the situation with the little girl to the concierge, whose face goes from confusion to pained before giving the girl a smile and thanking me for bringing this to his attention. Concierge guy takes responsibility for the girl and I go back out to the pool to explain what had happened to my friend. She was livid on the little girl's behalf, but mostly just wanted to resume her nap. Conveniently, at that time, middle homie had gotten out of the pool and was making faces at us while we were talking. I told friend to get some sleep, I'll watch the boys. Then middle homie got spear tackled back into the water because actions have consequences. Maybe 20 minutes to half an hour later, once I was starting to run out of steam, I sensed a disturbance in the force. A rather irate woman wearing a blouse that was inside out was dragging the little girl from before out to the pool area and demanding to know who told her she couldn't swim. The little girl, who was now silent with tears on her cheeks and a pathetically deflated water wing, pointed at me. I was instructed to get my ass out of the pool and explain myself. Why on earth was it so hard to watch an extra child while she got some adult time to herself? Why did I insist on ruining her first chance to get away from it all in months? Her little girl is an angel and it's no trouble to watch, blah blah blah. I explained that it wasn't a good idea to leave a little one in a pool with no adult supervision, pointing to a number of signs about no lifeguard on duty, all children must be accompanied by an adult, etc., etc. Inside Out Lady is getting steadily more belligerent, explaining like I'm slow that her daughter knows how to swim and was wearing floaties and would have been fine. She's getting more and more in my face, trying to act like I'm just the worst for ruining everything. And then player 3 enters the fight. It's my friend, and she's fresh out of fluffs to give. She starts reading Inside Out Lady, the riot act, demanding to know how she could be so stupid and irresponsible, and how dare she try and act like I'm the bad guy here. Inside Out Lady opens her mouth to reply and just gets steamrolled. Just look at your daughter. See what you've done? Appeared to finally get through to the woman because she looks down at her daughter, then back up to my friend. There's a flicker of shame on her face, and then it's all rage, and she swung. I am not ashamed to admit that stepping between those two without backup seemed like a poor life choice. I stopped the boys before they could get caught in the crossfire, told them to take a step back, and when several hotel employees came out to break up the fight, I stepped in. I grabbed my friend and pulled her back while 2 guys from the hotel grabbed the other woman. The combatants are separated and the police are called. Myself and my friend are back at her lounge chair with a large first aid kit the hotel staff gave us while the boys hover and make sure Mom's okay. She's sporting a magnificent shiner from the first punch and a couple other scrapes and bruises, but mostly seems livid that she got cold-clocked like that. Police arrive and get the story from everyone, even tangentially involved. We wind up being asked to provide contact information to the police. My friend declines a check over by an EMT, saying she's fine, just sore. The story Inside Out Lady provided didn't match up at all with what the hotel cameras showed, and she got some shiny bracelets put on her before getting shoved in the back of a squad car. My friend said she would be delighted to press charges for assault and was told the police would be in touch. Once the police were satisfied, it was definitely time to retreat to the hotel room. I got dressed and left for the evening after making sure everybody was okay, and on the way out, I asked one of the front desk folks what happened with the woman and her daughter. The woman was arrested and the girl's father came to get her. They couldn't give me any more information than that. Hope she's okay. The next story is titled, My Garden Destroyed by HOA Neighbor's Illegal Pool on Our Shared Lawn. Living in an HOA can be both a blessing and a curse, and I always thought I was lucky because I never had any major issues with them. However, when my neighbor moved in, I realized that his self-centered nature and his desire to one-up me could lead to potential problems. At first, his attempts to measure both of our properties seemed harmless, but as time went on, it became apparent that he was just trying to prove he had more land than me. While I didn't think it was a big deal, it was clear that my neighbor had a need to feel superior to me, which led to bigger problems down the line. Our driveways were slanted due to the hill on which our land was situated, and when my neighbor wanted to make his less steep, I thought it was a good idea. However, he went about it in a way that caused water to filter into my land. At first it wasn't too bad, but it soon became apparent that this was going to cause issues for me. I was concerned, but since it was legally done, I couldn't do anything about it. The real problems began when my neighbor decided to build a pool on our shared lawn without any permit or permission from the HOA. At first I thought it was innocent enough, but it quickly became apparent that my neighbor was using my property to build his pool without my consent. Not only was this illegal, but it also led to severe damage when a storm hit. During the storm, the pool flooded and quickly started to destroy my garden. To make matters worse, the water picked up my car and started carrying it towards the main road. I felt powerless and there was nothing I could do to stop the water from destroying my property. After the storm, I was devastated to see the damage caused by the flood. Everything in my garden was ruined and my car was totaled. I knew I had to do something to get justice, so I reported the illegal pool to the city code enforcement and informed the HOA about the damage to my house caused by my neighbor's driveway repair. My neighbor was forced to remove the pool and pay a huge fine to the HOA, but he refused to take responsibility for the damage he caused to my property. That's when I decided to take him to court and present evidence of his wrongdoing. It wasn't an easy process, but I knew I had to fight for my rights. In the end, my neighbor was ordered to pay for the yard repair and the value of my car. I was relieved that I had finally gotten justice, but I wasn't done yet. I wanted to teach my neighbor a lesson, so I decided to build a pool right in front of his house. I knew he couldn't do anything about it since I followed all the necessary procedures and got all the permits. When my neighbor saw my new pool, he was furious. I could tell he was jealous and couldn't stand the fact that I had something he couldn't. He continued to brag about his property, but deep down I knew he was envious of my new pool. I thought my revenge was complete, but I was wrong. My neighbor decided to retaliate and filed a complaint with the HOA about my pool, claiming it was causing damage to his property. I knew it wasn't true since I made sure to build it safely and legally, but he was determined to get back at me. I had to go through a long and arduous process of proving that my pool wasn't causing any damage, but in the end, I won the case. My neighbor was forced to stop making false claims, and I was relieved that my new pool wasn't going to cause any further problems. It's been a few years since the HOA has put a stop to my neighbor's attempts to sabotage my pool, and I can finally enjoy it without any worries. My neighbor still glares at my pool every time he walks by, but I don't let it bother me anymore. In fact, I've even made a few new friends in the neighborhood who love coming over to swim in my pool. As time went on, I started to notice something strange happening. My neighbor was spending more time than usual outside of his house, and he was always staring at my pool. It was almost like he was planning something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. One day I came home from work and found something disturbing in my backyard. My pool had been drained and there was a sign next to it that said, "This pool is a nuisance and a danger to the neighborhood. It must be removed immediately." I was shocked and furious. I knew my neighbor was behind this, but I had no proof. I immediately called the HOA and the police to report the vandalism. They investigated the matter, and after a few days, they found out that my neighbor was indeed responsible for the vandalism. It turned out that he was jealous of my pool and couldn't stand the fact that I had something he couldn't. He thought that if he got rid of my pool, he would be the most popular person in the neighborhood. The HOA fined him heavily for the vandalism, and he was also ordered to pay for the damages to my pool. He never apologized, but I knew that he had learned his lesson. He never bothered me or my pool again, and I could finally enjoy it in peace. A few months later, I received some exciting news. A film production company was interested in using my pool as a location for their new movie. They were offering me a significant amount of money for the use of my pool, and I couldn't say no. The movie was a hit, and my pool became famous overnight. People from all over the country wanted to come and see it, and I even started getting fan mail. It was surreal, but I enjoyed every minute of it. Today, my pool is still a popular location for movies and TV shows. I've even been approached by some celebrities who want to use it for their private parties. It's hard to believe that something that caused me so much trouble in the past has now become a source of joy and pride. As for my neighbor, he moved away a few years ago. I don't know where he went, but I wish him all the best. I learned that revenge is never the answer, and sometimes it's best to let go of grudges and move on. I'm just grateful that I was able to turn a negative situation into something positive, and I hope that my pool will continue to bring joy and happiness to people for many years to come. The last story is titled, "Neighbors Used My Property as Their Own. Paid for New Fence." I recently bought a house and have been having some work done before I move in. It was empty on the market for about 6 or 8 months before I bought it. One morning I got a call from my contractor asking me about moving the cars in the driveway, and of course I had no idea what he was talking about. I hadn't moved in yet. I left my job site and drove nearly a half hour to get there. As soon as I arrived, the people on the east side of me were walking towards the cars. I asked if they were their cars, and they said yes. They told me that they had been parking there for a few months with permission from the owners. I informed them that I was the new owner and they can't park there any longer. We went back and forth, and with the intention of being a good neighbor and trying to show some goodwill, I agreed to allow them to park there for a few more weeks until I move in, with the agreement that they would move them by 6 a.m. every morning. The rest of the week went by without incident. The contractor called me about scheduling a walkthrough on Saturday, and we set a time for early afternoon. When I arrived, there were 4 cars in the driveway and nowhere to park. The only on-street parking is 2 blocks away. I called them and asked them to move their vehicles, reminding them of our agreement. After 20 minutes, they finally came out and moved them. Speaking with them, they claimed to have misunderstood and thought our agreement only referred to weekdays and not weekends. I corrected them and moved on. Sunday morning, I grabbed a trailer and loaded some furniture to take over and store in the garage. Once again, there were cars in the driveway. I called them and got VM. I texted and said they had until a tow truck could arrive to get them moved. No answer. I called a tow company. 45 minutes later, 2 tow trucks showed up, backed in, and hooked up to the cars. All of a sudden, the neighbors were home. They ran out to stop their cars from being towed, and it ended up costing them a little over $300 to get them unhooked. I called my contractor and asked if he knew someone who could put in a driveway gate, and he did. I let the neighbors know that they could no longer use my driveway. On Wednesday, I get a call from the gate installer telling me that there are cars in the driveway. I called them and said tow trucks are on the way. They moved. The gate was installed and I went by to pick up the opener that evening. The neighbor's husband came out to confront me and I opted to just call the PD and deal with it legally. That Saturday, I went by to accept an outdoor furniture delivery and check on things when I noticed a towel beside the pool and a small kid's flotation device. My initial thought was that I just hadn't noticed it before, so I wrote it off and threw them both in the trash. On Saturday, the movers arrived with everything and we began moving things in. About 7 p.m., my daughter and I left to go grab some dinner, arriving back at the house around 9:30 p.m. The neighbors were in my pool. They were hanging out and using my furniture. When I opened the door and began raising hell, they told the kids to go to the house and the children ran to a corner of our fence and just walked through. They had cut out the privacy fence so it could be removed and had been using the pool at their leisure for who knows how long. Again, I called the police and filed a complaint. The dad was arrested for trespassing, DPP, and an outstanding warrant, and the oldest boy, 20M, for an outstanding warrant. I replaced the fence with a new one because they had destroyed the posts, runners, and pickets by removing and reinstalling the panel. Small Claims awarded me the total cost of 83 feet of 8-foot privacy fence, which came out to $3,800. The following Monday morning around 5 a.m., their cars were parked in the street where there's no street parking, so I made a phone call. They were gone when I left at 7 a.m. I haven't been paid yet, but I did notice a for rent sign in their yard this morning, so that's just as good. Good riddance. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.